Are you looking for the best graphics cards? In this video, we will look at some of the 5 best graphics cards on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description, so make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Number 1. AMD Radeon RX 7900 XTX. The lineup of current-gen GPUs all have one thing in common. They're expensive. That makes choosing the best GPU tough. But AMD has a compelling offer this time around. The RX 7900 XTX offers flagship performance at an excellent value amid the inflated landscape of GPU prices right now. For raw performance, the RX 7900 XTX is capable of running the most demanding PC above 60 frames per second FPS. And in the case of titles like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Horizon Zero Dawn, it can even hit around 100 frames per second. The RX 7900 XTX compares favorably with the RTX 4080 Super, though it has lost some rankings since NVIDIA dropped the price of its 4K GPU. In addition, it's smaller, and it calls for standard 8-pin power rather than the 12-pin connector feature on NVIDIA's most recent GPUs. That doesn't mean the RX 7900 XTX is without faults. It gets loud and it runs hot, and compared to NVIDIA, it lacks prowess in ray tracing games. Number 2. AMD Radeon RX 7900 GRE. The AMD RX 7900 GRE seems like a mistake. The card was originally released in China several months ago, and it never seemed like it would come to the US. Now, it's finally here, and with a bargain bin price of $550. Comparing the AMD RX 7900 GRE against the RTX 4070, it delivers slightly better performance overall for a lower price. In our review, we call it the best AMD GPU we've seen this generation. It manages to match the RTX 4070 Super at a lower price, while outclassing the RTX 4070 by around 15% at the same price. For frame chasers, the RX 7900 GRE is the best GPU at this price, and we recommend it as a strong RTX 4070 alternative. The main reason the RX 7900 GRE loses out from a top slot is the RTX 4070 Super. For a slight premium, you have access to better ray tracing performance and DLSS. Number 3. AMD Radeon RX 7600. The RX 7600 isn't a showstopper graphics card, but it's the closest we've seen to a true budget offering this generation. Arriving at $270, the GPU offers above 60 frames per second in demanding titles like Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p. That's what you want out of a graphics card, under $300. Versus the NVIDIA RTX 4060, the AMD Radeon RX 7600 manages to meet and often exceed the 60 frames per second mark for demanding titles at 1080p. It also supports AMD's Fidelity FX Super Resolution FSR, so it can scale up to higher frame rates in titles like Starfield and Alan Wake 2. The card only really loses out when it comes to ray tracing. AMD cards aren't great when it comes to ray tracing, and this budget-focused offering doesn't change that story. It can handle some lighter ray tracing in games like Resident Evil 4, but you'll need to turn off the feature in anything more demanding. Number 4. MSI RTX 3070 Gaming X Trio. While you won't be able to get a mid-range card under $500 from the latest gen lineup, you can opt for one from the previous gen. We're talking about the RTX 3070, a GPU still going strong despite being around 4 years old. In our RTX 3070 review, we found it to be a great option for 1080p and 1440p gaming. To begin with, the RTX 3070 comes with 8 GB GDDR6 VRAM, which is also found in the RTX 4060 Ti. This much VRAM is enough for most games, but only if you're playing them at 1080p. For 1440p, you may not be able to hit ultra settings in some games. Aside from that, there are 5,888 CUDA cores inside the 3070, paired with a bandwidth of 448 gigabytes per second and a memory bus width of 256-bit. To learn how capable the RTX 3070 is, we decided to test it in Cyberpunk 2077. This is one of the most demanding games out there, as it requires a powerful GPU to run smoothly. At 1080p, with everything set to ultra, the card delivered 98 FPS. We then switched the resolution to 1440p, and the card still achieved more than playable FPS 62. However, the number dropped to 29 at 4K, which disappointed us, considering the card isn't meant for 4K gaming. For reference, the 4070 RTX 3070 successor gave us 108 and 74 FPS at 1080p and 1440p, respectively. Overall, for an old-gen card, the RTX 3070 still delivers great performance. If there's a sale going on, you can pick it up for way less than $500. Number 5. Gigabyte Radeon RX 7600 XT OC. Our last pick is the AMD RX 7600 XT. We went with this GPU because, during our review, it had top-notch performance at 1080p and even managed to crunch numbers at 1440p in some titles. This GPU managed 91 and 67 FPS in Assassin's Creed Mirage at 1080p and 1440p, respectively. However, in Cyberpunk 2077, the FPS dropped to 86 and 5.3 and saw an even more dramatic decrease by 24 and 14 FPS with RT turned on at ultra settings. Looking at these results, we can see that 4K isn't the domain for this card, and understandably so, because it's an entry-level GPU. That said, it managed 221 and 158 FPS at 1080p and 1440p in more optimized titles like Doom Eternal. This means the likelihood of this GPU performing well increases with well-optimized games. Regarding its specifications, the RX 7700 XT has 2048 stream processors, 32 ray accelerators, a game frequency of 2,470 MHz, and a boost frequency of 2,755 MHz. What this means is that it has enough hardware to back its entry-level status and should be able to handle some demanding titles as well. The RX 7600 XT has 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory with a 128-bit memory interface. It has more VRAM than the 7700 XT and the RTX 4060 Ti. With this additional VRAM, you should be able to turn up the in-game settings without worrying about memory limitations. It also has a memory speed of up to 18 gigabits per second, which should work well with the 128-bit interface to deliver smooth processing in games and productivity tasks.